Hi there, First Philly, especially Miss McAllister's and Miss Freil's class. Here we are again in Miss Allen's music room. Welcome. And for the past few lessons that we've been doing, we have been making all kinds of do-it-yourself instruments based on stuff that we all kind of already have around our house. And I thought today that I would read you a story, and then we would try and imitate the sounds that we hear in the story in our do-it-yourself instrument for today. So we are going to read this wonderful story. It's actually one of my favorites. It's called Trombone Shorty. You can see this is a Coretta Scott King Award winner for Black Excellence in Media, and then there's also a Caldecott honor, and that's for the illustrations of this book as well. So on the front we have our friend playing the trombone, and it is written by Trombone Shorty Andrews, and it was illustrated by Bryan Collier. He was the one who won the Caldecott Prize. But the writer of this book is actually a jazz musician named Trombone Shorty, and he actually had a pretty long jazz career, so I have actually heard his music. It's pretty good. Here we go. Trombone Shorty. Where you at? Where you at? We have our own way of living down here in New Orleans, and our own way of talking too. And that's what we like to say when we want to tell a friend hello. So, where you at? Lots of kids have nicknames, but I want to tell you the story of how I got mine. Just like when you listen to your favorite song, let's start at the beginning, because this is a story about music. But before you can understand how much music means to me, you have to know how important it is to my hometown, my greatest inspiration. I grew up in a neighborhood in New Orleans. You could hear music called Treme. Any time of day or night, you could hear music floating in the air. So Treme is a suburb of New Orleans. And there was music in my house too. My big brother James played the trumpet so loud you could hear him halfway across town. Oh man. He was the leader of his own band, and my friends and I would pretend to be in the band too. "Follow me," James would say, playing his trumpet just as loud as he can, and they would pretend to join in with him, and it looks like they're not playing the trumpet, but maybe the trombone. There's one time every year that's more exciting than any other: Mardi Gras. Parades fill the streets, and beaded necklaces are thrown through the air to the crowd. I loved the brass bands with their own trumpets, trombones, saxophones, and the biggest brass instrument of them all, the tuba, which rested over the musician's head like an elephant's trunk. "Where you at? Where you at?" the music would call. All day long, I could see brass bands parade by my house while my neighbors danced along. I loved these parades during Mardi Gras because they made everyone forget about their troubles for a little while. Well, that's nice. People didn't have a lot of money in Treme, but we always had a lot of music. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys. If it was a choice between having a lot of money and a lot of music, I would probably still choose music.
I listened to all these sounds and mixed them together, just like how we make our food. We take one big pot and throw in sausage, crab, shrimp, chicken, veggies, rice, whatever's in the kitchen, and stir it all together and let it cook. When it's done, it's the most delicious taste you've ever tried. We call it gumbo, and that's what I wanted my music to sound like. Different styles combined to create my own musical gumbo. Oh, and I see somebody making some gumbo here. Ooh, with those big shrimp. Looks delicious. But first, I needed an instrument. The great thing about music is that you don't even need a real instrument to play. So my friends and I decided to make our own. That's what you guys are going to do. We might have sounded different from the real brass bands, but we felt like the greatest musicians of Treme. We were making music, and that's all that mattered. Then one day, I found a broken trombone that looked too beaten up to make music anymore. It didn't sound perfect, but finally, with a real instrument in my hand, I was ready to play. Oh, they were the kings of Treme with their music playing, right? The next time the parade went by my house, I grabbed that trombone and headed out into the street. My brother James noticed me playing along and smiled proudly. "Trombone Shorty!" he called out, because the instrument was twice my size. "Where you at?" Oh, that big trombone he found was way bigger than him. From that day on, everybody called me Trombone Shorty. I took that trombone everywhere I went and never stopped playing. I was so small that sometimes I fell right over to the ground because it was so heavy. At least it's not playing the tuba, right, friends? But I always got back up, and I learned to hold it up high. I listened to my brother play songs over and over, and I taught myself those songs too. I practiced day and night, and sometimes fell asleep with my trombone in my hands. Oh, look at that. He doesn't have a pet sleeping at the foot of his bed. He has got a trombone under the covers with him. One day, my mom surprised me with tickets to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, the best and biggest music festival in town. We went to see Bo Diddley, who my mom said was one of the most important musicians of all time. I agree. As I watched him on stage, I raised my trombone to my lips and started to play along. He stopped his band in the middle of the song and asked the crowd, "Who's that playing out there?" Ooh, heard him right away. Look at that. Everyone started pointing, but Bo Diddley couldn't see me because I was the smallest one in the place. So my mom held me up in the air and said, "That's my son, Trombone Shorty." Oh, and here he is, right here. "Well, Trombone Shorty, come on up here," Bo Diddley said. True story, friends. He got called on stage by Bo Diddley. The crowd passed me overhead until I was standing on the stage next to Bo Diddley himself. I walked right up to the microphone and held my trombone high up in the air, ready to blow. "What do you want to play?" Bo Diddley asked. "Follow me," I said. Woohoo! And he just walks right up and starts playing. I wish I had those kinds of guts. After I played with Bo Diddley, I knew I was ready to have my own band. I got my friends together, and we called ourselves the 5 O'Clock Band, because that was the time we went out to play each day after finishing our homework. Cute name. Oh, so he has a friend over here that has a big upright bass to play with him, and there's him in his trombone. We played all around New Orleans. I practiced and practiced, and soon my brother James asked me to join his band. When people wondered who the kid in his band was, he'd proudly say, "That's my little brother. Trombone Shorty, where you at?" Ooh. And now I have my own band called Trombone Shorty and Orleans Avenue, named after a street in Tremay. I've played all around the world, but I always come back to New Orleans. And when I'm home, I make sure to keep my eyes on the younger musicians in town and help them out, just like my brother did for me. Oh, and I really like these set of illustrations. I don't know if you guys can see these really clearly, but Trombone Shorty is using his trombone, and he's playing music, and the music is kind of shooting out of there and making the hot air balloon expand. So it's kind of like he was using his music to go travel the world. Pretty cool. Today, I play at the same New Orleans Jazz Festival where I once played with Bo Diddley. And when the performance ends, I lead a parade of musicians around, just like I used to in the streets of Tremay with my friends. Where you at? Where you at? I still keep my trombone in my hands and will never let it go. Great. And they even have this book I really like because there's even a little bit of history around New Orleans jazz music and around Trombone Shorty. And this is an actual picture of him on stage with Bo Diddley. When he was just a little kid, that trombone was bigger than he was. And then there is Trombone Shorty himself. All right, that is Trombone Shorty right there. Ooh. Sorry, I almost knocked my microphone over. There. So, Trombone Shorty had himself a trombone, but you heard at the beginning that he didn't have a trombone to begin with, and he didn't really have that much money when he was in Tremay, so he had to make his own instruments. He had to find his own way to make that music for himself, and that is what we are going to do today. So, we are going to make ourselves basically the equivalent of a brass instrument. It is technically a kazoo. But a kazoo is a brass instrument in a lot of ways. It has a bell that expels the sound out the front, which we saw in Trombone Shorty. It's kind of hard to see when it's this shiny. But there's a sound hole coming off the end. And although you can make this out of metal, usually that's what the brass family of instruments is known for, is their brass out exterior. This one is actually a lot easier to find the ingredients for because you don't have to find a whole big tube of metal to shape into a trombone. So instead of doing that, we are going to use just a regular toilet paper tube, or if you have a paper towel tube, the slightly longer ones, that will also work. Really, I just waited until we needed to change out our toilet paper roll, and here is the leftovers from that. Same thing if you have just a roll of paper towels around the house that somebody finishes, you can use those paper towel rolls actually to make a lot of different instruments. I'm going to use the shorter toilet paper roll today. The other things you're going to need for this instrument are a rubber band. I'm using a
pretty tiny one, as you can see. I do have a lot of bigger ones, but I didn't want it to crush down my tube. And a lot of those heavier duty rubber bands can kind of like, they're so strong that they just want to crush whatever it is you are trying to put them around. So in addition to those two things, all you need is some wax paper. Wax paper, friends, is different than parchment paper. Parchment paper doesn't have this sort of shininess to it because it is not coated in wax. Parchment paper is just wax paper before they put the wax onto it, basically. But this does need to be wax paper. You can find a roll of 65 feet of wax paper at the dollar store. That's where I got mine. And I pulled off a square about this big, and then I kind of folded it up because you can see I accidentally ripped kind of a hole in it here at the bottom. So what I'm actually probably going to do is only use this half of my wax paper. So I'll probably just cut off this end. Doesn't need to be in any particular shape. I would go with square just because it's a lot easier to see if you're getting it evenly all the way around a toilet paper or a paper towel tube. And away we go. So all you need to do, take this wax paper. You can either do it in a single layer or double layer the way I have here. And you want to kind of hold it and wrap it around your toilet paper roll without squishing the toilet paper roll, though. That's kind of the hard part, unfortunately. You want to make sure it lays flat against the top of the toilet paper roll or paper towel roll. I'll just say roll because that's easier than having to say it over and over again. And then you're going to put your rubber band on top. So you want to leave a little bit of space at the top for this membrane to vibrate, and that's actually what makes the kazoo sound. If you're using a toilet paper roll, your instrument is now done. There you are, you have your kazoo. If you're using a paper towel roll, however, you're going to want to take, I would say probably scissors. If you have a meat thermometer, that's actually a pretty good size. And as I showed you guys the last time, I have what's called an awl. And I can use this for making perfectly the same size holes in whatever it is I'm trying to poke. In a paper towel roll, you will want to try and put, I would say, no more than 3 holes in the paper towel roll, and you want to do it on the side. You don't want to do it on the top of your instrument. So when you play it, the sound has space to come out of the side. So here I have 2 holes in my little paper towel, or my toilet paper roll. For a paper towel roll, you would probably put, yeah, I would say like maybe 3 or 4 of these holes in it. And the end you're going to play from is actually the open end. You're not going to play from the wax covered end. So let's see if this works. Oh, and because it is a kazoo, it's not going to make any noise on its own, but if you make a sound into it, it will mute it in a way that a brass instrument would be muted. So, oh, I know. And there we have our kind of old school trumpety trombone sounding jazz instrument that we made for ourselves today. All right, so hope you guys enjoyed the lesson. I will see you again on Monday with a brand new activity. And I think we're probably going to move away from instruments for a little bit. I want to talk to you guys for the, oh yeah, I guess that'll be our last 2 weeks. We did 2 weeks of instrument making, and then we're going to do 2 weeks of dancing. I know. I'm really excited. I'm not a very good dancer, but I really love to dance, so I hope you'll join me. All right, see you then, guys.